They
Damn,
threw
this
her
ID is
ID
fake.
back at her face like she
What?
was nobody, just
No,
another
it's
black
not.
woman they could dismiss without consequence. What they didn't know was that with one phone call, she could make their entire world crumble. The marble floors of First National Trust gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, reflecting a world of old money and older prejudices. Angela Mitchell stood at the teller window, her modest cardigan and simple slacks a stark contrast to the mahogany panels and brass fixtures that whispered of generational wealth. The morning rush had died down, leaving only the echo of keyboards and the occasional shuffle of papers. No one knew that Angela had once designed the very security protocols this bank now used. No one even noticed how her eyes tracked every camera angle, every emergency exit, every vulnerable point in their system. The teller, a young man named Bradley with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent, didn't even look up when she approached. He continued typing, letting her stand there for a full 30 seconds before acknowledging her presence with a dismissive glance. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested he'd rather do anything else. "I need to make a withdrawal," Angela said quietly, sliding her ID across the polished counter. Bradley picked up the ID between two fingers, as if it might contaminate him. His eyes narrowed as he examined it, then darted between the photo and Angela's face. Once, twice, 3 times. "This doesn't look like you," he said loudly, loud enough for other customers to hear. "The photo quality is poor. This could be fake." Angela's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "That's my valid driver's license. I've been a customer here for 15 years. "Well, I've never seen you before." Bradley's voice dripped with suspicion. "And this address? Riverside District? That's quite far from here. Why wouldn't you use a branch closer to there?" The way he said there made it clear what he really meant. The black neighborhood, the poor side of town, the place where people like her belonged. What they didn't know was that Angela had just finished a conference call with 3 Fortune 500 CEOs about their cybersecurity vulnerabilities. What they didn't know was that her phone contained direct numbers to people who could buy and sell this entire bank before lunch. And with just one call, she was about to remind them that respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost everything. Bradley held her ID up to the light, making a show of examining it. Other customers were watching now. A security guard had drifted closer, hand resting casually on his radio. "I'm going to need additional verification," Bradley announced. "This looks suspicious. Maybe you should try another bank." Then, with a flick of his wrist that would replay in Angela's mind for the next hour, he tossed her ID back across the counter. It skittered across the marble and fell to the floor. The sound of plastic hitting marble echoed through the lobby like a gavel striking judgment. Angela bent slowly to pick it up, her movements deliberate, controlled. When she stood, there was something different in her eyes. Not anger, not hurt. Something far more dangerous. Calculation. "Thank you for your time," she said, her voice steady as steel. She turned and walked toward the door, her footsteps measured and precise. Bradley had already dismissed her from his mind, turning to help the well-dressed white couple who had just approached. But Angela didn't leave. She stopped in the corner of the lobby, pulled out her phone, and scrolled through her contacts. She found the name she was looking for. Robert Chen, chairman of the board, First National Trust. Her thumb hovered over the call button for just a moment, because sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones you'd never suspect. Sometimes they're wearing a simple cardigan and comfortable shoes. Sometimes they're the ones you dismiss without a second thought. And sometimes they're about to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Before we continue with Angela's story, if you've ever been judged by your appearance, dismissed because of your race, or underestimated because someone thought they knew your worth at a glance, hit that subscribe button right now. We share stories of everyday heroes who refuse to let discrimination define them. Rate this story on a scale of 0 to 10 in the comments below. How would you have handled Bradley's disrespect? Would you have walked away quietly, or would you have fought back immediately? And if you stay until the end, you'll discover exactly why the entire board of directors called an emergency meeting within minutes of Angela's phone call, and why Bradley's boss literally ran through the lobby to catch her before she left. Trust me, the revelation about who Angela really is will leave you speechless. Let's return to that marble lobby where Angela is about to make a call that will change everything. Angela. Mitchell had worked at First National Trust once, not as a teller or even a manager, but as something far more significant that the brass nameplates in the executive offices would never reveal. For 3 years, she had been their ghost in the machine, the invisible architect of their digital fortress, though her official title had been simply IT consultant. Every morning for those 3 years, she had walked through the same marble lobby, past the same tellers, the same security guards. They saw her with her laptop bag and assumed she was there to fix computers, maybe install updates. They never knew she was rebuilding their entire security infrastructure from the ground up, protecting millions in assets from threats they couldn't even imagine. But that was 5 years ago, before her mother's diagnosis, before she had walked away from a 6-figure consulting career to care for the woman who had raised her alone, who had cleaned these very offices at night to put Angela through MIT. Now, Angela worked part-time as a cybersecurity consultant from home, taking only select clients, making in a month what Bradley probably made in a year. But you'd never know it from her appearance. Designer clothes and expensive cars had never interested her. Her wealth was in knowledge, in connections, in the respect of people who mattered in rooms Bradley would never enter. On that Tuesday morning, Angela had simply needed to withdraw cash for her mother's birthday surprise. A trip to see the jazz musicians they used to listen to on their old radio. A simple transaction that should have taken 5 minutes. "Ma'am, you can't loiter here," the security guard said, approaching her as she stood with her phone. Angela looked up at him. Pete, according to his name tag. She remembered Pete. He used to nod at her when she'd worked there. Probably didn't recognize her now without her corporate attire. "I'm making a phone call," she said calmly. "Well, you need to do it outside if you're not conducting business." Angela almost smiled. "Oh, but I am conducting business. Very important business." She pressed the call button. Robert Chen answered on the second ring. "Angela? Angela Mitchell? My God, it's been too long. How's your mother?" "Hello, Robert. She's doing better. Thank you for asking." Angela's voice was warm but professional. "I'm actually at your First National Trust branch on Madison Street." "Oh, wonderful. Are you finally taking me up on that standing offer? You know, we'd love to have you back as our chief security consultant. The board still talks about the system you designed." "Actually, Robert, I'm calling about a different matter. I just had an interesting interaction with one of your tellers. Bradley, according to his nameplate." There was a pause. Robert knew Angela well enough to recognize that tone. "What happened?" "He tossed my ID on the floor after suggesting I was using fake identification. Apparently, people from Riverside District are suspicious by default." The silence on the other end was deafening. Angela could practically hear Robert's blood pressure rising. "He did what?" Robert's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "He also suggested I should try another bank." Very loudly, in front of other customers. "Angela, I am so—" "Robert," Angela interrupted gently. "Do you remember what I told you when I redesigned your security system? About the biggest vulnerability? You said it wasn't in the technology. It was in the people who thought they could judge threats by appearance." "Exactly. And today, your teller just proved that vulnerability still exists. He was so busy profiling me that he never noticed I was recording the entire interaction. He was so confident in his prejudice that he didn't see me photographing his computer screen when he turned it toward the other customer, showing their full account details. Your security isn't just compromised, Robert. It's broken. Angela, please, stay right there. Don't leave. I'm calling an emergency board meeting right now, and I'm sending Michael down immediately. Michael Harrison, the bank president. Angela remembered him too. He'd tried to convince her to stay 5 years ago, had even offered to arrange care for her mother if she'd continue working. I'll wait, Angela said. But Robert, this isn't just about me. How many other customers have been treated this way? How many have walked away without the ability to call you directly? We're going to find out, Robert said grimly. I promise you, we're going to find out. Angela ended the call and looked up to find Pete, the security guard, staring at her with a mixture of confusion and growing concern. He'd clearly heard her mention Robert Chen's name. Ma'am, are you? Did you just call Chairman Chen? Yes, Pete. We're old friends. Pete's face had gone pale. But you were... I was what, Pete? A black woman from Riverside? Someone who didn't belong here? Before Pete could answer, the elevator at the far end of the lobby chimed urgently. The doors hadn't fully opened before Michael Harrison burst out, his usually perfect suit disheveled from running, his face flushed with panic and exertion. Michael Harrison's Italian leather shoes squeaked against the marble as he practically sprinted across the lobby. Every head turned to watch the bank president, a man who never moved faster than a dignified walk, rush toward the black woman in the simple cardigan. Angela, he called out, slightly out of breath. Angela, please, wait! Bradley, still at his teller window, looked up from the customer he was serving. His expression shifted from casual disinterest to confusion as he watched his boss's boss approach the woman whose ID he'd just tossed on the floor. Michael, Angela said calmly, putting her phone back in her purse. You didn't have to come down yourself. Yes, I did. Michael's face was flushed. Whether from exertion or embarrassment, Angela couldn't tell. Robert called me. He told me what happened. Angela, I am mortified. Beyond mortified, the lobby had gone silent. Every teller, every customer, every employee was watching this unprecedented scene. Michael Harrison didn't come to the lobby floor. Michael Harrison certainly didn't apologize to customers in public. Who was it? Michael asked, though his eyes were already scanning the teller windows. Which employee? Angela didn't point. She didn't need to. Bradley had gone white as a sheet, his hands frozen over his keyboard. It doesn't matter who, Angela said, loud enough for everyone to hear. What matters is why it happened. And, more importantly, why it keeps happening. Keeps happening. Michael's voice cracked slightly. Michael, in the 15 minutes I've been in this bank, I've observed 17 security vulnerabilities, 12 violations of customer privacy protocols, and at least 3 instances of discriminatory behavior. And I wasn't even looking for them. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. This is your teller's computer screen, reflected in the glass partition, showing another customer's full account details. This is a recording of him discussing a customer's financial situation loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. And this, she swiped to another screen, is the timestamp showing he made me wait 90 seconds before acknowledging my presence while he browsed social media on his phone. Michael's face had progressed from flushed to crimson. Bradley! His voice cracked across the lobby like a whip. Bradley jumped, actually jumped, at his name. Yes, Mr. Harrison. My office, now. Bring your things. Sir, I don't understand. Now! But Angela raised her hand. No, Michael, that's not how this works. Michael froze. I'm sorry? Firing Bradley doesn't solve the problem. It just makes him the scapegoat for a systemic issue. Angela's voice was calm, professional, but there was steel underneath. How many Bradleys do you have working here? How many customers like me have been humiliated and simply never said anything? She turned to address the lobby, and her voice carried with the authority of someone used to commanding rooms full of executives. I designed this bank's security system. I protected your money, your data, your futures. And today, I couldn't even make a simple withdrawal without being treated like a criminal. A woman in the waiting area stood up slowly. She was Latina, well-dressed, but not expensively so. "The same thing happened to me last month," she said quietly. Different teller, same treatment. They made me bring 3 forms of ID and called my employer to verify my income. An elderly black man in a security uniform, not Pete, but another guard, spoke up. "I've been working security here for 10 years. I still get followed by other security when I'm off duty and trying to do my own banking." Michael looked like he might be sick. This can't be systematic," Angela finished. "Institutional? Exactly what I warned the board about 5 years ago when I said your biggest security threat wasn't hackers, but bias." Bradley had found his voice, though it shook. "I was just being careful. We're trained to watch for fraud." "No," Angela cut him off. "You were profiling. There's a difference between vigilance and prejudice, and you crossed that line the moment you looked at my address and decided I didn't belong here." Her phone buzzed. Robert Chen was texting. "Emergency board meeting in session. Can you come up, please?" Angela looked at the message, then at Michael, then at Bradley, who looked like he might cry or run or both. "You know what the ironic part is?" Angela said, her voice softer now but somehow more devastating. "I came here today to withdraw money for my mother's birthday. My mother, who cleaned these offices for 20 years. Who saved every penny to put me through MIT? Who taught me that dignity isn't about what you wear or where you live, but how you treat people?" She looked directly at Bradley. "My mother would have forgiven you immediately. She would have said you were young, that you didn't know better. But I'm not my mother. I know that at your age, with your training, with all the advantages you've clearly had, you do know better. You just chose not to be better." Michael's phone was buzzing constantly now. "Angela, the board is requesting your presence. They're all here. All of them." "All of them?" Angela raised an eyebrow. "It's Tuesday morning. Half of them should be in other cities. They're calling in. Video conference." Robert told them. He told them everything. About who you are. What you did for us. What happened today. Angela stood in the lobby, remembering another Tuesday 5 years ago when she'd made a different choice. She could still see herself in that conference room, 3 floors up, facing the same board that was now panic-calling an emergency meeting. "We need you to stay," Robert Chen had said then. "The system you've designed is revolutionary. No one else understands it like you do." But her mother had just been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. The doctors said she had good years left, but they would need support, consistency, presence. Angela had built First National Trust, an impenetrable digital fortress, but her mother needed her to build something else, a fortress of love and care around her declining memories. "Angela!" Michael's voice brought her back to the present. "Will you come up?" She looked around the lobby. Bradley was still frozen at his station. Pete stood awkwardly by the door. The other customers watched with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. This was a moment, Angela realized, that could change things, or change nothing. "You know what I did after I left here, Michael?" Angela asked. "I didn't stop working. I just became selective. Do you know who my clients are now?" Michael shook his head. Tech Global, Pinnacle Financial, Morrison Dynamics, 3 of your biggest corporate account holders. Angela let that sink in. "I've been protecting their money, their data, their futures. And every month, they pay me more than this bank paid me in a year. But you know what they also do? They treat every person who walks through their doors with respect. Because I taught them that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's a security risk." She pulled out a slim laptop from her bag, the same bag Bradley had eyed with suspicion. With a few keystrokes, she projected her screen to her phone, then held it up. "This is your current security system. The one I designed." Lines of code flowed across the screen. "And these," she highlighted several sections in red, "are the vulnerabilities that have developed because your staff doesn't follow protocols. They make exceptions based on how someone looks. They bypass security for people who look trustworthy and add extra steps for those who don't. The lobby was transfixed. Even Bradley had crept closer to see. On August 15th, Angela continued, someone withdrew $50,000 from an account that wasn't theirs. Your tellers didn't catch it because the thief was a well-dressed white man with a fake ID that was far worse than my real one. But he looked the part, so no one questioned him. Michael's face had gone from red to white. How do you know about that? That was classified because Tech Global was the victim. They hired me to investigate how it happened. I traced it back to this branch, to a teller who was so busy hassling a black customer about their legitimate transaction that they rubber-stamped a fraudulent one from someone who fit their idea of a real customer. She turned to Bradley. That was your colleague, wasn't it? The one who trained you? Bradley nodded mutely. This is what bias costs, Angela said. Not just dignity, not just respect, actual money, actual security, actual lives impacted when their life savings disappear because someone was too busy judging skin color to do their actual job. Her phone rang. Robert Chen again. Angela, I'm putting you on speaker. The entire board is here. Suddenly her phone was broadcasting to the lobby. 12 of the most powerful people in the state's financial sector were listening. Ms. Mitchell, a voice she recognized as Sandra Williams, the vice chair. We've just reviewed the security footage from this morning. We've also pulled up your file. We owe you an apology doesn't begin to cover it. I don't want an apology, Angela said clearly. I want change. What would that look like? Robert's voice asked. Angela looked around the lobby, at the employees, the customers, the security guards, all hanging on every word. First, mandatory bias training that actually means something. Not a video people sleep through, but real engagement with why this matters. Second, a complete review of every suspicious transaction flag from the last 5 years, sorted by demographics. I guarantee you'll find a pattern that has nothing to do with actual fraud risk. Third, consequences that apply equally, regardless of who the customer is. And fourth, she paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. Fourth, you need someone running security who understands that the biggest threat to a bank isn't someone who looks different. It's someone who thinks appearance determines worth. Would you come back? Sandra Williams asked immediately. Name your terms. Any terms. Angela looked at Michael, at Bradley, at the faces around the lobby. Then she thought of her mother, at home with her caregiver, probably watching her game shows and asking when Angela would be back. I'll consult, Angela said finally. But on my terms. And my first term is that I work from home primarily, because my mother needs me. My second term is that Bradley doesn't get fired. The gasp from Bradley was audible throughout the lobby. Michael looked stunned. Even the board members' silence over the speaker suggested shock. I'm sorry, what? Robert's voice crackled through the phone. You heard me. Bradley stays. But he becomes part of the solution. Angela turned to face the young teller directly. You're going to spend the next 6 months working directly with me on a new program. We're going to visit every branch, review every protocol, and most importantly, you're going to help me understand how someone with your training could make such a fundamental error. Because if we can understand that, we can prevent it. Bradley's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You want me to? Why? Because firing you teaches nothing except fear. Fear makes people hide their biases, not confront them. I want you to confront yours, understand them, and then help others do the same. You're young enough to change, smart enough to learn, and now motivated enough to do better. Angela, Michael interjected. That's incredibly generous, but it's not generous. It's strategic, Angela cut him off. Bradley represents hundreds of employees across your system. If he can change, visibly and genuinely, others will follow. If you just fire him, everyone else will simply become better at hiding their prejudice. She pulled up another screen on her laptop. I've already drafted a proposal. It's called the Dignity Protocol. Every customer interaction will be logged, not just for security, but for respect metrics. AI monitoring will flag discriminatory patterns, longer wait times for certain demographics, additional verification requests that don't match risk profiles, dismissive language patterns. That sounds like surveillance, someone on the board said. No, it's accountability, Angela replied. The same way you monitor for theft, you'll monitor for discrimination. Because they're both forms of stealing. One takes money, the other takes dignity. She opened her bag and pulled out a small, worn notebook. This was my mother's. She kept track of every time she was made to feel small in this building when she cleaned it. Every snide comment, every accusation of theft when something went missing, every time security followed her to her car, despite her working here for 2 decades. Angela flipped through pages covered in her mother's careful handwriting. January 15, 1995. Accused of stealing a watch. Watch found in executive's gym bag. No apology. February 3, 1996. Told to use service elevator, not main one, even after hours. March 22, 1997. Security called when she was found in boardroom doing her job. Cleaning. 20 years of indignities, Angela said. And she never said anything because she needed the job. How many of your customers need their bank? How many stay silent when they're humiliated because they have nowhere else to go? Robert's voice came through heavy with emotion. What can we do to make this right? You can't change the past, Angela said. But you can change the future. Starting now. Starting with Bradley. Starting with every employee who thinks they can judge worth by appearance. She turned back to Bradley. So what's it going to be? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? To confront your assumptions? To become better? Bradley straightened up, and for the first time since Michael had called his name, he looked Angela in the eye. Yes, I am. I'm sorry. Not just because I got caught, but because I see now what I did, who I was, who I don't want to be anymore. Angela nodded. That's a start. Apologies are words. Change is action. Let's see your actions. The board accepts your terms, Robert's voice announced. All of them. When can you start? I already have, Angela said. Bradley, get someone to cover your station. You're coming with me to the conference room. We have work to do. As they walked toward the elevator, the elderly black security guard who had spoken up earlier approached them. Ms. Mitchell? Thank you. My granddaughter wants to work in banking. Maybe now she'll have a chance at being seen for who she is, not what she looks like. Angela smiled. What's her name? Jasmine. Jasmine Washington. Have her call me, Angela said, handing him a business card. I'll be implementing an internship program as part of the Dignity Protocol. Real opportunities for people who've been traditionally overlooked. The elevator doors opened, and Angela, Michael, and Bradley stepped inside. As the doors closed, Angela saw the lobby, customers and employees alike, break into spontaneous applause. Change, real change, didn't come from punishment. It came from understanding. And today, in this marble and mahogany temple to old money and older prejudices, understanding had finally walked through the door. It just happened to be wearing a simple cardigan and comfortable shoes. The conference room on the top floor was a testament to corporate power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 30, and video screens showing the faces of board members calling in from around the country. Angela had been in this room before, but never like this. Never as the one holding all the cards. Bradley sat beside her, looking distinctly out of place among the executive furniture and original artwork. His hands shook slightly as he poured water from the crystal pitcher. Don't spill, Angela said quietly. Not because of the table, but because nervousness makes you look weak. And right now, you need to look like someone worth investing in. He steadied his hands, nodded, and set the pitcher down carefully. Robert Chen's face dominated the main screen. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know, Angela Mitchell single-handedly designed our current security infrastructure. She prevented 14 major breach attempts in her first year alone, saving us an estimated $50 million in potential losses. And we let her walk away, Sandra Williams added from another screen, her voice heavy with regret. I didn't walk away, Angela corrected. I made a choice. My mother needed me more than you did. But that's not why we're here today. She stood, commanding the room despite her simple attire. We're here because Bradley threw my ID on the floor. We're here because that action represents a cancer in your institution. The belief that worth can be determined by appearance, that respect is earned by looking the part rather than being deserving of basic human dignity. What Bradley did was inexcusable, another board member interjected. What Bradley did was learned, Angela countered. Show of hands. How many of you have ever walked past someone in this building assuming they were cleaning staff when they were actually a client? How many have held elevator doors for people who looked like they belonged and let them close on others? The silence was telling. Angela pulled up her laptop, projecting data onto the main screen. These are your numbers. Loan approval rates, sorted by zip code and demographics. Notice a pattern? The disparities were stark. Riverside District, where Angela's mother lived, had a 23% approval rate. Westmont, the wealthy white suburb, had 87%. Same credit scores, similar income levels, vastly different outcomes, Angela continued. Your loan officers, like Bradley, have been trained to see risk where they should see opportunity. This is damning, Robert admitted. This is fixable, Angela said. But only if you're willing to do more than window dressing. Bradley, tell them what you told me in the elevator. Bradley stood, his voice stronger now. I was trained to trust my gut about customers. But my gut was really just my prejudice. I saw Ms. Mitchell's address and immediately categorized her as high risk. I didn't even look at her account history. 15 years of perfect banking. And I didn't even check because I'd already decided she didn't belong here. How many others are like you? Sandra Williams asked. Most of us, if I'm honest, Bradley admitted. We don't think we're racist. We think we're being careful. We use words like suspicious and unusual, when what we really mean is different from us. Angela nodded approvingly. That honesty is why Bradley stays. Because he can name the problem, he can help fix it. She pulled up another screen. The Dignity Protocol isn't just about training. It's about restructuring how you evaluate employees, how you serve customers, how you define success. Success can't just be about profits, if those profits come from denying services to entire communities. What's the timeline? Robert asked. 6 months for initial implementation. Bradley and I will visit every branch, conduct assessments, implement new protocols. We'll also establish a dignity hotline, a direct line customers can call if they experience discrimination. Not buried in corporate bureaucracy, but a real response team with power to act. And if employees resist? Someone asked. Then they find new jobs, Angela said simply. This isn't optional. You can't afford it to be. Your 3 biggest corporate accounts, my clients, are watching this very closely. They're very interested in whether their money is in a bank that reflects their values. Michael cleared his throat. There's something else. Angela, we pulled the security footage from 5 years ago. Your last day. We saw you training your replacement, making sure everything was perfect, even though you were leaving. You could have left us vulnerable, but you didn't. My mother taught me to leave things better than I found them, Angela said, even when they don't deserve it. Your mother, Robert said, deserves recognition too. We'd like to establish a scholarship fund in her name for students from underserved communities pursuing careers in finance or technology. Angela's composure cracked slightly, her eyes glistening. She would like that. She always said education was the only thing no one could take away from you. Ms. Mitchell, a new voice spoke. Jonathan Hayes, the oldest board member, known for his conservative views. I'll be honest, I'm uncomfortable with all of this, but I'm more uncomfortable with the realization that we've been failing not just morally, but financially. If bias is costing us money and talent like yours, then bias is bad business. Sometimes doing the right thing and doing the smart thing are the same thing, Angela replied. This is one of those times. She looked at each face on the screens, then at the people in the room. I need one more thing. A public statement. Not a vague apology, but a real acknowledgement of what happened today and what's going to change. And Bradley delivers it. Bradley's eyes widened. Me? You. Because redemption needs a face. And that face needs to be someone who did wrong, owns it, and is actively working to make it right. 3 hours later, the lobby of First National Trust was transformed. News crews had arrived, word having spread through social media about the morning's incident and the unprecedented response. Employees, customers, and curious onlookers filled the space. Bradley stood at a hastily erected podium, Angela beside him. His hands no longer shook. He'd spent the last hour working with Angela on his statement. Not just memorizing words, but understanding their weight. My name is Bradley Thompson, he began, his voice carrying across the marble expanse. This morning, I threw a customer's ID on the floor because I believed she didn't belong here. I was wrong. Not just procedurally wrong, but morally wrong. The crowd was silent, even the journalists pausing their note-taking. Ms. Angela Mitchell, the woman I disrespected, is the architect of this bank's entire security system. She has protected your money, your data, and your financial futures. But even if she were none of those things, even if she were simply a customer trying to access her own money, she deserved respect. He paused, finding Angela's eyes. She nodded encouragingly. I've been trained to look for threats, but I was trained wrong. I was taught to see threat in skin color, in zip codes, in accents and appearances. That training stops today. Ms. Mitchell has agreed to help us implement the Dignity Protocol, a comprehensive program that will retrain not just how we serve customers, but how we see them. A reporter called out, "What consequences are you facing?" Bradley looked at Angela, who stepped to the microphone. Bradley is facing the hardest consequence of all, the requirement to change, to confront his biases daily, to help dismantle the system that created them, and to be publicly accountable for his growth. Firing him would be easy, transforming him is hard. We're choosing hard. Ms. Mitchell, another reporter asked, why show mercy to someone who showed you none? Angela's answer was swift and clear. Because mercy without justice is meaningless, and justice without mercy is revenge. Bradley will work harder than anyone in this bank over the next 6 months. He'll face uncomfortable truths, angry customers who remember their own humiliations, and the daily challenge of proving that people can change. That's not mercy. That's accountability. Robert Chen's voice came through the speakers they'd set up. The board of First National Trust commits to full implementation of the Dignity Protocol. We're also establishing the Rita Mitchell Foundation, named for Angela's mother, who cleaned our offices for 20 years while raising a daughter who would later save our bank. The foundation will provide full scholarships for students from underserved communities. The crowd stirred. Many knew Rita Mitchell. She'd been a fixture in the building for 2 decades, always smiling, always kind, never complaining even when she had every right to. An elderly woman in the crowd raised her hand. I knew Rita. She cleaned my office for 15 years. I'm ashamed to say I never knew she had a daughter at MIT. I never asked about her life at all. That changes now, Angela said. Part of the Dignity Protocol is seeing the full humanity of everyone who enters these doors. The janitor has a story. The security guard has dreams. The customer from Riverside has value. Everyone does. A young black woman in a business suit stepped forward. I'm an account manager here. I've been code switching for 5 years, hiding my accent, straightening my hair, trying to fit in. Today, watching you, Ms. Mitchell, watching you stand in your power without changing who you are, you've shown me I don't have to shrink myself to succeed. More voices rose from the crowd, employees and customers alike, sharing their stories of discrimination, of being made to feel less than, of accepting it because they thought they had no choice. Angela raised her hand for quiet. This isn't about me. It's about us. All of us who've been told we don't belong, that we need to be different to be worthy. Today we say no more. Today, First National Trust becomes the first bank in this state to implement comprehensive dignity standards. Others will follow, or they'll lose customers to those who do. Ms. Mitchell, a reporter from the Financial Times called out, your 3 major clients, Tech Global, Pinnacle, and Morrison Dynamics, have they commented? Angela smiled. Check your phones. Across the room, notification sounds chimed. All 3 companies had simultaneously released statements supporting the dignity protocol and indicating they would require similar standards from all their financial partners. Change doesn't happen in isolation, Angela explained. It happens when power meets principle. Today, they met. Bradley stepped back to the microphone. I want to address my fellow employees directly. I know many of you are uncomfortable. I know some of you think this is an overreaction to one incident. But I've learned something in the last 3 hours. When you're the one holding the power, discrimination feels like caution. When you're the one being discriminated against, it feels like violence. We've been committing violence against our customers' dignity, and we didn't even know it. He pulled out his own phone, showing a photo. This is my grandmother. She immigrated here from Poland in 1952. She faced discrimination for her accent, her clothes, her foreign ways. She changed her name from Bronislawa to Bonnie to fit in. I dishonored her memory today when I discriminated against Ms. Mitchell. But I honor it now by promising to do better. The room erupted in applause, not the polite golf clap of corporate announcements, but real, emotional appreciation for truth spoken plainly. Angela took the microphone one last time. 6 months from now, we'll stand here again. We'll report our progress, our failures, our successes. Bradley will present the data on how discrimination has decreased and dignity has increased. And my mother, despite her declining memory, will be here to see it. Because some things are worth remembering, worth fighting for, worth changing for. What about you? Someone called out. Will you stay this time? Angela looked around the room, at the marble floors her mother had mopped, at the brass fixtures she'd polished, at the executive offices where Angela had designed systems to protect millions. I'll stay as long as it takes to make this place worthy of the people who built it. Not the executives or the board members, but people like my mother who literally built it with their labor, their sacrifice, their dignity intact despite every attempt to strip it away. She turned to Bradley. Ready to get to work? He nodded. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. As the crowd began to disperse, an older black janitor approached Angela. He was wearing the same uniform her mother once wore. Your mama would be proud, he said simply. She always said you'd change the world. Guess she was right. Angela's eyes filled with tears for the first time all day. She changed it first. She showed me how to stand tall when the world tries to make you small. She taught me that dignity isn't given, it's claimed. The man smiled. I remember she used to say something when people treated her poorly. They can only make you feel inferior if you give them permission. Guess today you revoked everyone's permission. As the sun set over the city, casting golden light through the bank's windows, Angela stood in the same spot where her ID had been thrown on the floor that morning. The same marble, the same brass, the same crystal chandeliers, but everything had changed. Bradley stood beside her, holding a thick binder. the first draft of the Dignity Protocol Training Manual. "Where do we start?" "We start," Angela said, "by remembering that every person who walks through those doors has a story. A mother who sacrificed, a father who struggled, dreams deferred and dignity demanded. We start by seeing them, really seeing them." 6 months later, First National Trust's transformation was featured on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal. The headline that Angela liked best read, "The Dignity Revolution: How One Woman's Humiliation Transformed American Banking." But Angela wasn't at any of the photo shoots or interviews. She was at home with her mother, looking through old photo albums. Rita Mitchell might not remember what she had for breakfast, but she remembered cleaning those offices, remembered the pride she felt when Angela graduated from MIT, remembered teaching her daughter to stand tall. "Did I ever tell you," Rita said, her voice soft but clear, "about the time the bank president's son threw up in the boardroom and I had to clean it?" "No, Mama," Angela lied. She'd heard this story 100 times now. "I cleaned it without complaint, but I made sure to look him in the eye the next time I saw him, to remind him that I knew, that I remembered, that his mess didn't make him better than me." Angela squeezed her mother's hand. "You taught me well, Mama." Meanwhile, at the bank, Bradley was conducting his 47th Dignity Protocol training session. His transformation had been remarkable and genuine. He'd become the program's most effective advocate because he could speak to the prejudice from the inside, could name it, own it, and show others how to overcome it. "Bias isn't about being a bad person," he would tell each new group. "It's about being an unconscious person. The Dignity Protocol is about waking up." The numbers told the story. Loan approvals in underserved communities up 340%. Customer satisfaction across all demographics increased by 67%. Employee turnover decreased by 45%. And most importantly, not a single dignity violation reported in the last 3 months. Other banks had started implementing their own versions of the Dignity Protocol. Universities were teaching it in business schools. It had become a movement, all because one woman refused to accept that discrimination was just how things are. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. It was in the security guard who now greeted everyone with the same respect, the teller who took extra time with elderly customers struggling with technology, the executive who remembered the janitor's name and asked about their family. It was in the young black girl who walked into First National Trust to open her first account and was treated like she was already a millionaire, because, potentially, she was. Angela had been right. Sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones you'd never suspect. Sometimes they're wearing a simple cardigan and comfortable shoes. Sometimes they're cleaning your office at night. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, waiting to be seen. And sometimes all it takes is one person with the courage to say, "This changes now."